The LA Kings make another roster move while Kings fans continue to wonder about Jim Miller's future, what moves the Kings will make this season, and when is the right time to rebuild. That and more on this fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that wraps up the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. We're going to get your emails in a moment, but some quick Kings news to pass along. The Kings made another roster move. They called up forward Cole Gutman from the Ontario Reign while placing forward Trevor Moore on injured reserve. Gutman has played 41 career NHL games, all with the Blackhawks. He has a total of 8 goals and 14 points in those 41 games. In his first season with the Ontario Reign, he's got 9 goals and 23 points in 31 games this season. He was born in Northridge. So looks like the Kings will not be going with the 11-7 setup that we saw in the last game. I imagine they wouldn't bring Cole Gutman up if they didn't intend to play him. So we shall see about that. The Kings are playing on a Friday and a Saturday. And so because of that, we have moved up our fan feedback show a day. We're going to be doing it again next week because next week the Kings are playing on a Friday and a Saturday back-to-back as well. So we've got 19 emails to try and get into for this show, so let's get into it. Our first email comes from Dario in Surprise, Arizona. He says, I noticed last week there was someone else from Surprise, Arizona. So you guys got to get together. Disappointed in the Tampa Bay loss because I felt like the Kings played well until the final 4 minutes. I know that the fans will want change, but who and what price? I know that the Kings will always be a defensive team, but other teams have better offenses than the Kings defense. Will it be a coaching change or trades? Do you think that Perry can play another season? Thank you, Eddie, for everything that you do. Let's hope for a good 2026 for Kings fans. Go, Kings, go. That was Dario in Arizona. I don't necessarily agree that other teams' offenses are better than the Kings' defense. The Kings have had a top 5 defense in terms of goals allowed per game pretty much all season. And we know what Darcy Kemper can be when he's on his game. If it weren't for that, frankly, I wouldn't have much hope in this team. But if they can, they've shown they can be an elite level defensive team. They just need to get a bit more offense. If they do, then they have a fighting chance in a playoff series. But as far as will it be a coaching change or a trade, if the Kings go any kind of prolonged stretch where they're playing bad hockey and they're losing, then there'll be a coaching change. And then we'll see if that has the desired effect or not. If it does, then I believe the Kings will look to make a trade to add to the roster. If that happens and they don't improve, then I think the Kings will have to look at a retool or maybe a rebuild. As for Corey Perry, I think he can play another year in the role he's playing now, which is basically just get in front of the net and be kind of a specialist in some respects, as far as what he brings to the table. So I think Corey Perry, he has another year in him if he wants to, and by all accounts he does. Whether it'll be with the Kings or not, I don't know. Vincent Lovestedt in Burbank checks in. He says, "Hi Eddie, I am 15 and I started listening to the podcast about 3 years ago. Wow. This wild game was electric. I believe it will end up being a game that brings back the Byfield we know and love. He got first star and, in my opinion, played a great game and had a big impact. He's my favorite player, and he has had me doubtful about him the past couple of months, but hopefully a couple of multi-point games strung together will bring back his confidence. We know what he can do, and I believe that he has the potential to be a 70 to 80-point player. Go Kings, go." And that was Vincent in Burbank. Well, Vincent, thanks for the email. Good to hear from the next generation of Kings fans. He obviously wrote this after the Minnesota game where Q had a goal and an assist. Look, I hope and I think if Q can string together a few games to get his confidence back, that we can start to see some of that amazing play that we saw from him a year ago. There's no doubt it's been a big struggle this year. All you can do is, keep the faith, tell him to keep playing, be aggressive, and hopefully we see a big couple of games from him at some point to just get him going. But so far, unfortunately, it has been a really, really tough season for Quentin Byfield. Scott in Simi Valley says, your show is hot. You're a solid host, and you've tons of emails from fans who care. So I'll try to be brief. The reason to rebuild now is clear. The Kings aren't a contender and won't be without several key additions, but many players around the NHL don't love LA. We are old and poorly managed and will not contend for a cup. It's as simple as that. The Kings prospect pool is shallow but not empty. There are some good but not great pieces. With our 3 goalkeeper prospects, Greentree will be a solid third tier, our third liner, and Wojtek Šias has looked sharp and was a player of the game in the win over Canada. I'd like to see Angus Booth be given a shot, and there's also Lombardi, Bustevich, etc. Some of these kids are years away, but none are superstars, but it's a start. By the way, my no-trade list is short. Clark, Laferriere, Kopitar, Kempe. I am absolutely not trading them. I'll close with a news flash to AEG. NHL hockey is about more than selling extra $20 beers and cheeseburgers for a couple of playoff games. It's about drinking from the Stanley Cup. Thanks, Eddie, and go Kings go. And that was Scott in Simi Valley. Well, I'll say I don't necessarily disagree with you about the Kings not being a contender, but I understand that a rebuild is not an easy decision or a decision that any organization really wants to make. So for sure, people in leadership, in front office for the Kings, they're paid to make tough decisions. So I understand why an organization would want to make absolutely sure that they've exhausted all of their options when it comes to trying to figure out if this team is or isn't what they would like it to be. And for some people, you say it's a pipe dream, and I get that. But I really think, in Kopitar's final season, they want to take one more run at it. And if things don't go the way that they think that they could or the way we would like, then I think it is going to be time to make some trades. And you know what? On your no trade list, if it gets bad and the Kings are going to do some sort of a major retool or rebuild, I would look to trade Darcy Kemper next season, because he's obviously had 2 great years. Maybe he's got one more good year left, and there's goaltending is always a need out there. And again, if the Kings are really going to rebuild, then let's go for it. Maybe Eric Portillo has a great rest of the season, and we roll with him next year. So again, if it goes really bad, I wouldn't say that that's off the table for me. Kevin in Bellingham, Washington, via Torrance, California, checking in. He says, thanks for all of your hard work, Eddie. Just writing in after being caught up in a bit of the excitement of the World Juniors. Love to see what Šias is doing, and it has to be one of the most exciting storylines to emerge from this unfortunate mid-King season. Comparison is the thief of all joy. I know, but I couldn't help to think about Liam Greentree. I, like many Kings fans, hold a lot of hope for this kid, and I'm wondering what you think his ceiling is. Is he a top 6 winger in the NHL in your eyes? If he turns into a Trevor Moore, would that be on the higher end of the spectrum for potential career outcomes for Greentree? Is his potential something greater or closer to a Kempe, or is he just a middle 6 guy at best? I know I'm asking you to speculate here, but I figure it'll be a fun exercise. We look forward to the future Kings to be excited about. Thanks for all you do and for taking the time to read this. Go Kings go. And that was Kevin in Washington. I think Liam Greentree's ceiling is to be a Dustin Brown type player. He has good size. He can play with a bit of an edge and a physical aspect, and he can put up points. Now, that's the top ceiling. And I'm not suggesting Liam Greentree will be, have the career that Dustin Brown had, but he can be that kind of a player, I think. Like a power forward who's physical and can score. I think it's probably more realistic to project him as a middle 6 forward. I think worst case scenario, he would end up being like another Carl Grundstrom. Fred Glasser in Orange says it's Monday night right now. We're 2 games from locking in on first place. Yet, if we drop tonight's game and the last game of this homestand, Hiller will be fired. Last March and April, we were the hottest team in the NHL, 17-4, and I won't count the 82nd game since we sat out a few players after the mauling of the Oilers. So this past July, September, I was convinced that this team had every reason to continue where they left off. I never foresaw or imagined Byfield, Deneau, Fogle, Moore, and Anderson would be having disappointing seasons. Anderson? And not even a fortune teller could have told us that Kuzmenka would get on Hiller's wrong side. As it's said in Spanish, he dicho. Boy, Garcia. Let's see if the team can rise to first place instead of Hiller being unemployed before the team leaves for Winnipeg and Edmonton. Well, Fred and Orange, since your email, the Kings did get 3 out of 4 possible points. As you well know, Jim Hiller is still very much employed. The current situation with the 4 players out of the lineup, I think, has put a holding pattern on things right now. As far as, let's say if the Kings lose the next 2, I think the current roster situation is going to be taken into consideration by management. But it still can go a lot of different ways at this point of the season for the Kings. Optimism for the second half of the Kings season. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has the time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I love how it tracks all my subscriptions and let me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting out customer service numbers. The automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. I can finally see exactly where my money is going each month. You can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you get a clear view of your entire financial picture. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. All right, let's keep the emails going. We're flying through it here. Jeff from Westminster checking in. He says, everydayer, first-time writer. Good to hear from you, Jeff. I wanted to all season, or I waited to all season, but back-to-back wins over the Wild and frustrations of listening to every fan feedback has tipped the scales. This fire Hiller talk is crazy. 1, 2, 3, or hundreds of messages doesn't speak for all the Kings fans. We need to calm down. Walk with me on this tangent. I am not a Dodgers or a baseball fan, but being born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley, I have plenty of family and friends who are Dodgers fans. I'll keep tabs on the boys in blue. So there are many humble thoughts. A little over a decade ago, the Dodgers started making the playoffs consistently. They had so many playoff blunders in which the blame was directed at Dave Roberts. Fire him is all I heard. As I told my family and friends after this past MLB postseason, there are a lot of people who owe Dave Roberts an apology. Which brings me back to the NHL. Jim Hiller is a human. He has been head coach for 2 years. LA made the playoffs in 23, 24, and 24, 25. They tied and set records in the latter. In the 2024-25 Western Conference playoffs, our Kings were the only team that had a chance against the Oilers in the West. Yes, he's not perfect. It made me cringe when he didn't accept responsibility and made excuses after the collapse. But let the man cook this year. We need to stop with all these short leashes on coaches. We can acknowledge December was ugly, but we are still in the hunt. All it takes is to get into the playoffs, as we know from 2012. Yes, if we miss the playoffs or can't make it past the first round this postseason, firing Hiller would be a reasonable thought. But until that happens, relax, people. And that is from Jeff in Westminster. I actually like the Dave Roberts analogy a little bit. Now, I'm only a casual MLB fan at this point, and because I live in LA, and like you, I have a lot of Dodgers family and friends that I kind of keep track on what's going on. I think the argument, though, against Dave Roberts, finally being a World Series manager multiple times and, probably a Hall of Famer, if we're being honest about it, because if you win a couple of World Series, you're certainly on that list. But I think that the argument against that would be that the Dodgers spent so much money and gave him so much talent that even a average manager like Dave Roberts could not fail. That would be the argument anyway. But I like the optimism. I'm an optimist by nature. I sincerely hope that we'll see a good second half from Quentin Byfield. I think Kuzmenko's coming around. They need to get through this weird stretch of what's going on with the roster, and we'll see what happens. But I do like the optimism. It is refreshing. Let me take this off. Gary in Orange says, I have a really good solution for the Kings to get better at the center position. Mark Scheifele or Gabe Velarde. I heard the Jets are going to unload some of their players before the trade deadline. Scheifele is having a great season, so it might cost us Greentree, Turcotte, and multiple draft picks, but I think it would be worth it. Scheifele is 32 and probably has 2 or 3 good years left. The reunion with Velarde would obviously be interesting, and the Jets are less likely to trade him since he's younger and almost as productive as Scheifele. What are your thoughts? And that was Gary in Orange. Well, Mark Scheifele has a no movement clause, so he would have to want to come here. And if he doesn't, then that's the end of that. He is signed for the next 4 years at $8.5 million per season. Now, the Jets might unload some players before the deadline. They are circling the drain right now. But I don't think Mark Scheifele is one of them. I think that they hitched their wagons to him and goalie Connor Hellebuck when they signed them to 8-year deals a couple of years back. But just to play along, if Mark Scheifele was willing to waive his no-trade clause and the Jets wanted to trade him, I think it would take a major piece like Quentin Byfield or Brandt Clark and probably a prospect and a first-round pick to get somebody like a Mark Scheifele. He's a really good player. Brian number 2 in Huntington Beach. He says, I put number 2 because I know there's another Brian from Huntington Beach that regularly chimes in. All right. So, well, hopefully the other Brian will let us know he's Brian number 1. But anyway, Brian number 2 says, I just wanted to thank you for doing the podcast. Been listening to you almost every day for the past 2 seasons, and you definitely provide a lot of insights into what's going on. Please keep it up. I will. Thank you very much. Watching the following games after Deneau's departure got me thinking, is it possible his bad chemistry with Hiller affected the entire team inside the locker room? I only say this because, sure, the loss of the Lightning was bad, but immediately after he left, the Kings started looking like their old selves. Quite different to Gabby leaving. He left so quietly that he left us wondering why. I asked my friend this, and they all still believe Hiller was the main issue, which I also agree with. Your thoughts? Go Kings go. And that was Brian number 2 in Huntington Beach. As far as Deneau leaving and maybe that, being the open window to kind of clear the air, so to speak, I think it's possible. I never heard a bad word about Phillip Deneau, and I was pretty caught off guard by all of this, to be honest with you. Now, I've talked about it before. He's a guy who wore an A on his sweater. He was a respected veteran, and he apparently really made it known he wanted out. So I've told you what my reaction to that is. It doesn't sit well for me for a guy in that position to ask out during the middle of the season when he's on a team that's right in the middle in the thick of a playoff race. So, perhaps a lot of the players in the room felt the same way as I do. And now that he's gone, they feel like, all right, we can move forward, that everyone is now committed in this room. So I think it is possible that the Kings have been playing better of late because Phillip Deneau is gone. Keith in Culver City says, in a recent interview, Jim Hiller was asked about using Alex Turcotte in shorthanded situations, and he said no. Again, showing his inability to use young players. I think it would be a great idea because he's fast and wins faceoffs, and he's never going to be a 30-goal scorer, as his father thinks he is. Give him a chance. That was Keith in Culver City. I saw that interview with his dad as well, and I thought, oh, man, fathers, they have ultimate confidence in their boys, I guess. I didn't hear Jim Hiller say that. I don't know what the context was and exactly what he said, but let's just take your word that he said he wasn't going to use him or didn't want to use him. I think Alex Turcotte would be a great penalty killer. I would love to see a guy like Alex Turcotte on the PK over somebody like Anze Kopitar or Adrian Kempe, not because those guys can't kill penalties. I would rather they conserve their energy for the offensive side of things. And I think a guy like Turcotte could be a very capable penalty killer. That said, the Kings have a lot of penalty killers. I mean, Byfield, Armia, Laferriere, Fogle, they get a lot of PK time. When Moore is healthy, he can kill penalties. But I would not mind Alex Turcotte being in the mix as well. I don't see any reason why not. Darren in the OC says, extremely frustrated fan. Let's talk about overtime. The last 2 or 3 seasons, the Kings have to be the worst team in the league in OT. This season is just excruciating. 10 losses already halfway through the season. Does this mean 10 more for the second half? Why can't they figure things out? Is our personnel not capable of being successful in overtime? Watching them in OT is like the power play. No imagination, no creativity, nothing. Why does the coaching staff not fix it? Tonight, the guys were pathetic in overtime. Doughty was just awful too, standing around, not skating. Didn't San Jose play last night? Hiller and the staff need to look in the mirror. This is not acceptable. Can't hold leads late in the game. Too many stupid penalties, and the PK is always under pressure. I blame none of the goals on Darcy tonight. He deserved better. This team is not a playoff team. Time to hit the reset button. Blow out Hiller, blow out Luke, and the stale upper management. Get rid of Holland. We need change. The fans deserve a better product on the ice. Wish I was more positive, Eddie, but I'm also tired of seeing this team lose at home and in overtime. And that was Darren in the OC. The Kings do have the second most overtime losses this season. They have 10 losses in 16 overtime games. That is not the worst. Vegas actually has 12 losses in 17 overtime games. And in terms of percentage, the St. Louis Blues are the worst, 0-8 in overtime games this year. There are actually 8 other teams worse than the Kings in terms of overtime winning percentage. But the Kings are not good enough. I think you could point to a lack of high-end talent. A lot of open ice in the 3-on-3, so fast, quick, elusive players can really excel in that type of setup. And the Kings don't really have a lot of those guys. But as I said on our last show, I would really like to have seen Andrei Kuzmenko get a chance in overtime. I would love to have seen him out there with Kevin Fiala as well. We'll see going forward. Edward from Chicago in LA on winter break says, having gone to both the Ducks and Sharks games while at home on break recently, is it crazy for me to say that I think the Sharks are maybe our biggest rival? The Ducks had almost no fans at Crypto, and the Ducks team didn't seem to really care or try much. There were plenty of belligerent and loud Sharks fans at the game, which I appreciate. Love some passionate fans. And the cheers were quite loud when the Sharks scored. Also, the Sharks players seemed to take everything way more seriously and compete harder. Small sample size, but just my observation. That was Edward from Chicago. I think our biggest rival is the Oilers, historically and currently. So as far as like what visiting fan base has the biggest presence in our arena, I don't know. That's kind of a different question, but I think our biggest rival is definitely the Oilers. Grading the Kings first half, that and more next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it to the next level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On LA Kings with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. Our next email comes from Sasan in Westwood! ! By the way. I don't know if you meant to do that. Westwood. Now that the Kings have officially crossed the halfway point of the season, what grade would you give their first half performance? How would you judge GM Ken Holland's first half as Kings GM? And now for the fun question. I recently listened to a previous interview you gave, and you mentioned that you were once a rock DJ at a radio station. Did you have a favorite band or artist that you would feature when you were a DJ, or did you try to mix it up? Any good music recommendations for those of my generation who like classic rock? Thank you again for taking my email. Wishing you all the best. Go Kings, go. Sasan in Westwood. I would give the Kings first half of the season grade as a C-. Ken Holland, I would give an incomplete to. He did trade Philip Deneau for a second round pick. I don't think that was a great deal for a team that's looking to win now, but we'll see what it could possibly turn into. But ultimately, Ken Holland's going to be graded on what he does at the trade deadline. Yes, I was a DJ at a classic rock station and a hard rock station. We don't pick our own music. You may not know that, but we don't pick our own music. They give us a playlist that we have to play, and we play what they tell us to play. So, and me recommending you like some good classic rock bands. I mean, when I was younger, classic rock was like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. I don't know what classic rock is for like this younger generation? Is Guns N' Roses like classic rock now? I guess so. I don't know. So I guess I can't really answer that. Chris in the San Fernando Valley says, first time writing. I got into hockey about 4 years ago, and being mostly an LA fan, I chose the Kings. Well, welcome aboard. This loss against the Sharks sucks, Eddie, and it felt forced on us. It sucked finding out that we ended up losing 4 players before it even started. The back and forth between the teams was nice, but again, we can't lose close games this season. I don't know much about the sport, but I feel like it's not total doom and gloom. The team obviously needs to make a trade, but for who? Who's going to fix our lineup? Go Kings, go. Chris in the San Fernando Valley. Well, the 2 names I've heard a lot as far as maybe the Kings acquiring are Alex Tuch of the Sabres and Brian Rust of the Penguins. However, both Buffalo and Pittsburgh are on fire right now, so they're not going to be trading anybody. And again, it's tough this year because so many teams are alive for playoff spots. They don't want to get rid of players, so it's going to be a very interesting trade deadline this year. I think, though, the big question when it comes to trades for the Kings is how all in are the Kings willing to go, and who would they make available? Is anybody available? Is Brandt Clark available? Is Quentin Byfield available? I mean, those are the most attractive players, I would think, especially Brandt Clark. And for me, I would not trade him under almost any circumstances. Crystal in Santa Monica checks in, and she says, I have an alternate theory to one of yours. You described Danault as potentially a distraction and problem in the locker room that has now been solved by his trade. I believe instead that he was only the canary in the coal mine. Easy evidence if you watch the video circulating on social media with Hiller talking to the guys in the locker room after wins, not after losses, but wins. He looks meek and uncomfortable, like he doesn't know what to say to them and has a sense that he's not even wanted there. Based on the locker room leadership role Danault occupied, him speaking up to the coaches in front office about dissatisfaction with game management wouldn't be him going off some ego-driven tangent. It was him being the face of what was probably a pretty common sentiment among his teammates, most of whom are less inclined to make waves. Thanks for all you do for the fan base. That was Crystal in Santa Monica. Okay, Crystal, so if I'm following what you're saying that Danault was speaking on behalf of the rest of the team or several other teammates. I mean, I've never thought Phillip Danault was a very vocal guy. He always seemed pretty quiet. And I mean, if you're going to talk about vocal guys, Drew Doughty, I don't think would have any issue speaking his mind to Kings management if there was a problem with the coach. He's a future Hall of Famer and he has the respect of the organization. And he's not a guy who holds his tongue. So I don't see Phillip Danault having to talk for Drew Doughty or Anze Kopitar, who's, the greatest LA King of all time. He's in his final season. Why would he hold his tongue? You know what I mean? I know it's not necessarily his nature to be kind of outspoken, but I think if there were things that needed to be said, I think guys like Kopitar and Doughty wouldn't have a problem saying those things. I think this was more a Phillip Danault thing than a team thing, personally. Frank in Ranchos Palos Verdes says, I have to agree 1,000% with you on your replay take. The first shot on TV after a goal is scored is the scored upon team coach staring at his iPad and then wait, challenge, no challenge. It's gone too far. That along with the ridiculous offsides challenge calls, replay somehow needs to be scaled back in a huge way. Don't want the replays eliminated, but given the choice of the current state of replays or just getting rid of them altogether, I would vote to eliminate replay. Keep up the good work. As always, and go Kings go, Frank in RPV. Replay is not going anywhere. I know that. But I would like to see a maximum amount of time for a replay, like 60 seconds. You got 60 seconds to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out in 60 seconds, then the call clearly wasn't egregious. I think replay was designed to overturn the obviously blown calls. And when you have to go super slow-mo and go frame by frame, no, we're just going to stick with the call on the ice in that situation. So I think instant replay was, again, designed to correct obvious errors, not to be basically the officials on the ice. Dan in Huntington Beach says, just finished your summary on the Kings versus the Sharks game. I was crushed to hear your report that Kopitar and Armia's equipment was left in LA, which probably indicates they are not going on the road trip. This is a huge disappointment because my wife surprised me with tickets to the Canadian Life Center to attend the game. We're staying at an Airbnb across the street from the stadium. She will be sporting a Kopitar jersey and I with Fiala. We have tickets second row behind the goal where the Kings attack twice, hoping we can cheer them on to victory. Thanks for your amazing podcast. Go Kings, go. And that was Dan in Huntington Beach. Dan, that sucks. I'm sorry that you're going on this awesome road trip and the Kings are very shorthanded for the game, but hopefully you can cheer them on to victory and stay warm. I did look, it's going to be 16 degrees in Winnipeg on Friday. Jakub in Slovakia checks in. He says, I'm writing this after the overtime loss to the Sharks, but I had to properly cool off before. I know we're missing 4 regulars, but blowing a lead with 1 minute again is just brutal. What really stands out to me is that we're missing that player, the one who can change the game with one move. Celebrini is a prime example. It's obvious how much harder it is to compete without an elite difference maker. We can make every line combo possible. We can be structured, but when the game tilts or tightens, we don't have that guy. And then there's the veteran angle. We were told experience wins playoff rounds, but we have to get there first. Too often, it's the veterans making the mistakes that cost us games. That just can't be the case if this identity is supposed to mean something. I'm tired of waiting for the Kings to figure it out, to finally string wins together. And I'm starting to worry that it just might not happen organically. This is Kopi's last season. We're in a playoff spot. Make a move, big and bold one. Get a difference maker. If it works, great. If it doesn't, fine. Tear it down and rebuild. Just don't do nothing. Thanks for all you do, Eddie. Jakub in Slovakia. I had a FaceTime chat with Jakub this past week, and we had an awesome conversation. I learned all about how he became a Kings fan. And I will say this. If you're Jakub and you're staying up until 3, 4 a.m. to watch the Kings lose like that, you have every right to be very pissed off. He's going the extra mile to be a Kings fan, and it's awesome, but I can understand why he would be quite upset with a loss like that. I don't know that the Kings are going to get like a game-changing type of player in a trade. I mean, those guys just aren't available for obvious reasons. Maybe a guy like a Jason Robertson, kind of pie in the sky. I mean, he might be available, but you're right. The Kings don't have one of those guys. And Macklin Celebrini, that guy is ridiculous. We've got 2 more to get to. Brian in Mission Viejo says, I think the Turcotte, Fiala, Kuzmenko line is on fire. So knowing Hiller, he'll change that line in 2 games because he doesn't believe in consistency, it seems. Despite having 4 forwards out at the same time, we put up a good fight against the Sharks. However, I would like to see a stat for which team has blown the most leads in the third period this season. I would expect us to be top 3 for sure. Despite the loss, I was very much looking forward to seeing Lee out there again, as I think he's earned a roster spot just like Kalanius. We need a win tomorrow against the Jets. They are literally the worst team in the league today. But with our Kings playing down to others' level, I am worried. Go Kings, go. And that was Brian in Mission Viejo. Yeah, the Jets lost their 11th game in a row to the Oilers Thursday night. I'm also worried about this game. It's sad to say. But after a minutes-long investigation on the internet, the Kings have a 6-2-3 record when leading after 2 periods this season. So that's not, I don't think that's the worst, but it certainly could be better. Finally, Ed in Brea checks in. He says, in the loss to the Sharks, the Kings can't allow an elite talent like Celebrini to skate in the middle of the ice and shoot in a high-danger area. Byfield needs to force Celebrini to go away from the net instead of towards the net because he backed off. He should be in support of Foegele to defend instead of skating away. You're right. Kempe made a crucial error, making the mistake of turning the puck over to Celebrini. As a goalie, it drives me crazy because I would yell to Kempe, take away the pass and let him shoot. As a goalie, I can control my positioning and angle to make a save. A one-timer across the slot is more difficult because a goalie is moving and not set positionally wise and has more open areas for the puck to go in. Good news, Kuzi is getting hot. Keep up the good work. Go Kings, go. And that is Ed in Brea. On that play, Macklin Celebrini totally skated right around Warren Foegele. And you just can't be aggressive on him because he's such a good skater. I do agree that Byfield should have helped out more once Celebrini got around Foegele in that situation. I think I said when they had the 2-on-1, you have to play the pass, even if that means a guy like Macklin Celebrini is shooting. Because if he makes that pass through you, there's no chance for the goaltender. However, on the game tying goal, I think if you're the Kings, you have to make anyone else beat you besides Celebrity. You have to make him pass, even if you're leaving your man wide open. Don't let that guy get the opportunity to tie or win the game. All right. Thank you to everyone who took the time to email this week. We got them all in, and with just one show. This show literally not possible without your participation. Thank you for taking the time to email. I appreciate it. Now, our next show will be following the Kings-Jets game, and then the next day we'll have a show recapping the Kings-Oilers game. So let's hope the Kings can at least beat the Jets. If you want to get an email in for a future fan feedback show, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com. You can always leave your comments on the YouTube episodes if you're watching in the comment section. Stay interact with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.